And we're live at Armature Works in the beautiful city of Tampa Bay, Florida. I am so grateful to have you all here today to listen to stories of service, sacrifice, transition, and transformation with amazing individuals who are doing great things in our community and improving lives around the entire country. I'd be so grateful if you could continue to support us by first visiting our YouTube channel and subscribing, and then also to visit us at vettingamerica.com to learn more about our mission, to learn more about our purpose, and to learn more about the resources and organizations that are out there improving lives in the veteran and military space. Let's jump right into it. Today's show features Lieutenant Colonel and Green Beret Scott Mann, who served in the United States Army from 1991 to 2014. He's currently the founder and storyteller-in-chief of A Hero's Journey, which helps warfighters and their families tell their stories post-military service. Most recently, Scott has written a play on the reality of war, which he performs with other veterans called Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret, which he has begun to take across the country on a 20-city tour. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Scott.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
So, we've met a few times now, and of what I gathered, you seem to be a man full of passion, pride, compassion, and empathy. Were you always like this? And was this who you were before you joined the Army?
Based on that bio you just read, I'm also very old. I mean, it's like, holy crap.
Is that why you didn't give me the years?
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I wanted to be a Green Beret since I was 14 years old.
Okay. What's the story behind that?
I grew up in a little logging town in Mount Ida, Arkansas. And one day a Green Beret walked into our soda shop.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw this guy, I mean, he was in his Class A's, his blouse jump boots, and took his Green Beret off when he came in. And I was like, that's me. That's what I'm gonna. I had no idea what this guy was. I just knew that I was gonna be that. And he ended up being a mentor of mine all the way up until I retired. And so yeah, at 14, I decided that's what I was gonna do. And so I would say that I've always been very passionate about the things that I pursue in my life. It's almost as if they're gifted to me. Not gifted to me, but the knowledge of what I want to do next, or that drive seems to come from a place within.
So we actually were talking a little bit about wisdom before, and you said that there are certain people that always pursue that kind of wisdom. Do you feel like that was you as a kid, and as you grew up into like 14, wanting to be a Green Beret and then working towards that?
Not intentionally, no. I mean, I don't know many people that deliberately pursue wisdom at that age. Mm-hmm. I mean, in fact, I look back and look at my boys and you already think you know it all, right? I mean, and I think that would probably be more a description of me. However, I did learn how to be coachable. My father, Rex, he taught me at a very young age how to be coachable.
That's huge.
And that I didn't know everything, and to really appreciate good coaching and good mentorship. And so I was very blessed at an early age to get that kind of coaching, get that kind of development, and it was like coaches were always putting themselves in my life. And that's what I would attribute the wisdom to, if I have any today. If I've learned anything, it's that you never stop being a student. The minute you think you know what you need to know, life's getting ready to kick you right in the junk.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I do think that wisdom is an ongoing journey, and you never really figure it out.
So, do you feel that by the time you were 18, when you joined, right at 18 years old, did you join? No,
I went into college and
right.
got my commission and went into the Army as a second lieutenant.
So you went into the Army as a second lieutenant. Yeah. Do you feel at that point you were running towards your future or running away from something after all the time?
Definitely running toward it. Like I said, for me, true north as an azimuth set at 14, I was going to be a Green Beret. I knew I was going to be a detachment commander. I knew I was going to be in 7th Special Forces Group. Like, I had a 20-year plan. And
okay, I like that.
I had talked to a ton of mentors who had helped me develop that plan, the same way I'm on a 10 or 15-year plan right now, to be, a storyteller and a performer. So yeah, I was running towards it. I didn't have all the tools or all the knowledge that I needed, but I did have a plan, and I did have an azimuth. Mm-hmm. And that was enough, and I had the fuel, the passion.
So you spent the first 5 years of your career not in the Green Berets.
Right.
Tell us a little bit of that story. Tell us a little bit about how you went from just being a normal officer in the Army, however you want to call a normal officer in the Army,
right,
into becoming a leader of leaders and a leader of warfighters.
Yeah, first of all, I was not happy when I was in the regular Army. I was the worst I was the world's worst junior Army officer. I sucked. I was terrible. And it was because I wasn't where I wanted to be.
Yes.
Not only was I not in Special Forces yet, I had been branched into logistics, Quartermaster Corps. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be an infantryman. So I spent the first couple of years in the Army, going to every hard school I could, Ranger School, Air Assault School, Jump Master School, and I made it. But at the same time, I also had kind of this victim mindset where I had been given, I'd worked so hard and I'd been given this really crappy outcome, and poor pitiful me. And it nearly took me out.
Yep.
I crawled inside a bottle, I partied way too hard, and so busy feeling sorry for myself that I almost lost the path. But, grace of God, I got back on it and made it through selection just in the nick of time.
Yes.
And got back on the path. And once I got in Special Forces, I'm not kidding you, Adam, the day I tried out and I showed up at selection, I was grinning from ear to ear. In the play where Danny Patton is grinning and the sergeant says, "What the hell are you smiling?" That was me.
Yeah.
Because I knew it was the fact that I had made it. I couldn't believe I was still alive. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I was there, I knew I was never going home.
So from a lot of storytellers like David Goggins, who talks about the Green Beret training he's been through, we all know it's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
So what were some of the things off the bat that you excelled at during that training, and what were some weaknesses you had to overcome to become the Special Forces warfighter and leader that you were always meant to be?
So, great question. First of all, a lot of people get Green Berets confused with Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and that kind of thing, Marine Special Ops. Green Berets are, they are a combination of Jason Bourne, Lawrence of Arabia, and the Verizon guy, right? I mean, they are relationship-based connectors. Mm-hmm. Who just happen to be lethal. So the specialty of a Green Beret is to parachute in below the noise, connect at exactly the right spot with a village elder, and then immerse themselves in the language, the culture. They literally get surrounded on purpose with just like 12 guys, build relationships, and then they help the little guy stand up against the big guy. Okay. So it's important that people, whereas a Navy SEAL or an Army Ranger, they're gonna go in on a target, take that target down with extreme surgical lethality, and then come off the target, mm-hmm. right? So Green Berets do some of that, but their real specialty is by, with, and through indigenous people.
Wow.
I loved that.
Yeah.
I loved everything about that, the whole Lawrencian aspect of that, this notion of working with folks who were on the outside or who were minority populations or oppressed. Our motto, free the oppressed, mm-hmm. it really resonated with me. So, all of the interpersonal skills that are required to be a Green Beret, building rapport, establishing connections, relationships, mobilizing people to stand up and take action.
It was made for you.
I fell in love with it the second I got into it.
Because it takes war fighting to a whole nother level. When, again, what I'm learning in the last couple of years of my life is to choose compassion over aggression, to choose love over hate, and it's harder to choose those things. And I can only imagine what it's like to be by yourself in the middle of a place around people that don't want you there, don't really like you, and you're there having to set up relations, and seeing you act out your play and basically act out your life and what you've been through. It was really special, and it touched my heart because the amount of love and compassion you had for those people was evident in that play. Though it was a fictitious play, the way for you it was real, and you were reliving that experience.
Yeah, the story was certainly real. And the other thing that you hit upon is as a Green Beret, you've got to be ready to take care of business. That Jason Bourne aspect of you do need to have surgical lethality. In fact, Special Forces has had more killed in action post 9/11 than all of the other Special Operations Forces combined. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because they are embedded in these local populations, working with the very people who the insurgent or the outside bad actor needs to survive.
Yes.
So you're basically threatening their overall stability, and so naturally they're going to come for you with all 4 feet. So as a Green Beret, you do need, yes, these very strong interpersonal skills. You need to be able to create vulnerability with someone very different than you, but you also need to be able to take care of business. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true for today's leaders, right? Absolutely. I think I think that's why it resonated so much with me. What I had trouble with, though, I would say what I had trouble with on a lot of levels were some of the technical skill sets required to be a Green Beret. For example, long-range navigation, land navigation. I'm good at it now, but at the time I really struggled with it, and it created a lot of anxiety with me because I got recycled, mm-hmm. and that sucked, getting recycled and wondering if your dream's going to come true.
Mm-hmm. So give us a synopsis of your Special Forces career, because I've read about 7 or 8 countries where you operated in.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what 18 years in the Green Berets is like for Scott Mann.
It went so fast. It started out at Fort Benning, Georgia, Benning School for Boys, like a lot of, and now I guess it's Benning School for Boys and Girls, because we have ladies coming into special ops now. So, but it started there, and then I went to Panama as a lieutenant. Did 3 years there, fell in love with Latin America, and then went to selection, got selected, got my Green Beret, and then worked in 7th Special Forces Group pretty much my whole career. I was very fortunate as an officer to have spent 10 years in 7th Special Forces Group. It is unheard of.
Yeah.
And so as an officer, I commanded multiple times as a Special Forces team leader, a company commander. And then even on staff, I was deployed to Latin America, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador during the 90s, which was a pretty sporty time to be working in the Andean Ridge, a lot of counter-drug operations. And then when 9/11 hit, focus on Afghanistan, and really you were either in Afghanistan or getting ready to go back. And I did multiple tours there, did a lot of work with Afghan tribes, and towards the end of my career helped put in place a program known as Village Stability Operations, or Afghan local police, where we worked with local Afghan tribes to stand up on their own against the Taliban. And I wrote a book about it called Game Changers that's still in a lot of play today at Fort Bragg. They're using it in Afghanistan and other places. And it was a cool way to end my career by focusing on that bottom-up approach and writing a book about it, because now my oldest son is on the same path to become a Green Beret. And hopefully, we figured out a few things from our mistakes that will help him.
Absolutely. I believe that to be true, especially watching the play and how you even threw that in there.
It's in there.
It's in there. It's pretty incredible. Talk to us a little bit about a defining moment in your Special Forces career that really sticks out in your head as something that was really life-changing for you.
Wow, that's a great question.
Because there's a lot, probably.
Yeah, there's plenty of moments like that where, and I would say that's true for all of us, right? We have these defining moments, but I'll go to one for me that was pretty significant, and the defining moment was when I failed the course and I was looking at a recycle.
Yes.
For me, that was one of those things where, like, am I going to stay on this path, or am I going to go another path?
Absolutely.
And looking at failure, and looking at all these years of dreams and work and sweat, and now I'm looking at failure, right? And whether or not I'm going to continue, for me, that was a hugely defining moment. And it also, the reason I say it was defining was years later when I went to combat, and I found myself in really crappy situations where we were losing men or people were hurt, and I was having to make decisions. It was actually having dealt with that deep failure that I drew from in those moments. It was not so much the training. Of course it was, but at an emotional level where I had to dig deep, it was how I had dealt with that failure all those years ago when I thought I was going to be kicked out of the course.
Absolutely. And I've talked to a lot of enlisted folks on transition and how difficult it's been. I've also talked to officers where they said, I've had these struggles, but it's not as hard, I feel, as an enlisted person. I feel like you have a real unique stance on this issue of transition and the struggles behind it, being that you were an officer, but a Special Forces officer. You were a war fighter.
Yeah.
You spent years overseas, hooking and jabbing.
Yeah.
So do you believe this helped you in your transition, or maybe actually disadvantaged you?
So in the beginning, it didn't. And in today, now it does. Okay. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. When I got out of the military, I retired, right? So I did it very much on my terms. It was, my dad had always told me, when you stop loving it, you'll know it's time to leave. And I did. I woke up one morning, I still loved the men, I still loved the missions, but I looked around at the headquarters I was in, the bureaucracy, and I was like, yep, I'm done. You probably know that feeling.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I made a plan. I got my stuff together. I had real estate. My brother and I do commercial real estate. I had a book ready to write. I had a retirement pension, in place. I had contract offers to be a contractor. It was set. Mm-hmm. I'm not kidding you, Adam. Within 48 hours of taking off those desert boots and putting on the Tampa Bay flip-flops, the snakes in my head started squirming. And I felt like I was on a different planet. I still lived in Tampa, still had my family, but everything shifted. Everything was different. You know, my kids were walking around on eggshells. Mom, what's wrong with Dad? What's going on? My wife didn't know what mood I would be in on what day. And I didn't even know who the hell I was, you know? And on the surface, it looked great. Had a contracting job, writing a book, you know, kind of living the dream. Making good money, had a job. So all of the things that you hear today, people talk about transition, I had them. But yet, I was going dark. To a point that my first year in transition, I didn't know if I was going to come out on the other side of it. I had some thoughts about where my life was going to end up that it's almost embarrassing to talk about today. But I thought about checking out, you know, and that was the darkest it got for me. And then I met a guy named Bo Eason, who is a professional storyteller, former NFL football player. This guy was on stage speaking, and he told a story about him blowing his knee out as a San Francisco 49er, free safety, them carrying him off the field, and he said, if I don't find something to do, I'm gonna go to prison, because the only thing I know how to do is hit people. And I thought, that's me. That's me. And so I immediately started following this guy and connecting with him. He ended up being a mentor, and he showed me how to use storytelling to connect to my miles and my scars and my past,
to your miles,
and bridge that gap into the current world, and to use narrative as the vehicle to come home.
I love it.
It saved my life.
It did.
And I became a professional storyteller, a speaker, a playwright, an actor.
Did you ever think that any of these things was...
Are you kidding me? I just finished up a sequence in LA where I'm embodying an animal. Well, I guess my boys will know now that, yes, I did that, right? All my special forces brothers are gonna be like excommunicating me.
Yeah.
But all of that stuff is part of storytelling. It's all in how you express your physicality, your intention, your availability. And when you do that, as Bo Eason says, people can't look away from you, right? You own the room, you're relevant, and that's what I want. So storytelling, and I learned all that in Special Forces, having to make connections with villagers, build relationships. I had forgotten it. So that's what I meant by a long term, it saved me. And now I'm on a mission to help other veterans see the power of narrative and storytelling in their life, and civilians.
I know your wife, Monty, has always been a boulder for you. I mean, in the play, you talk about her. On all the interviews, you talk about her. What you guys have is something very special, and a lot of people can take a lot from that. But how was she able to help you in your transition? Were there tools for her? Did she struggle? Did she go through her own transitional blues? Because a lot of times we don't talk about the fact that military spouses go through the same things that veterans do. They're very underserved, they're very unacknowledged. But I feel what you're doing with this play has given them almost a platform to be heard. And I want you to talk a little bit about her transition with you and how you guys were able to help each other through it.
So I love talking about Monty, because I mean, like, you talk about marrying up, I married up. This woman has been with me for 24 years, my entire career, you know, she's been with me. And we've had our ups and downs, we've had 3 boys that we've raised, but at the end of the day, the most amazing woman I have ever known in my life. Like, I mean, she is, in my opinion, she's not of this world. Like, what she's done for me and my family and us is indescribable. And she's, you know, did she go through her own? Absolutely. And in fact, it was the play, because when I started writing the play, it started as a one-person show, and Danny Patton was the character, this composite character of several team sergeants I'd known. But as I kept writing the story, his wife, Lynn, kept coming into the story and kept emerging as the hero. And really, she is. In the play, you see that she's really the hero in the story. And it hit me, I'm like, wow, that's absolutely right. And so this play tells the story of the military family in a way that, like you said, we don't honor them. We don't talk about the sacrifices and what they've done, particularly our military spouses. And our military kids are an unspoken voice. When I started writing that play and we started getting it into performance, Monty started having some serious anxiety. Like, I mean, we were fighting more than we had in years. Like, what the hell's going on? And it come to find out, it was all of the stuff that she had pressed down for years to keep me safe, to keep me going back into the fight. She just pressed it down. And now it was coming up, and now it's gonna come up on the stage for all these people to see.
Love it.
You know, and so, yeah, and now we have spouses coming up to us all the time saying, thank you, that was my life.
Yes.
You know, and that means the world to me, and I think more importantly, it means the world to Monty, because she's becoming a voice for them in ways that, man, she's good. And it's
good.
Fun to see her, you know, turned loose doing that.
I got to see the first time she performed.
Yeah, it may be the last time. I don't know. I'm trying to keep her
so
in it.
Good.
She stepped in for AIM,
Yep.
you know, who couldn't perform that night, and she crushed it.
Crushed it. In my personal opinion, your transformation is absolutely epic. To go from where you were fighting battles on the battlefield, leading troops, being a special forces warfighter, to now being a writer, a playwright, an actor. It's such a crazy dichotomy from where you were to where you are now in just 5 years. But how did you go from that to taking the fight to the internal enemy at home and using these therapy outlets to really try to motivate other veterans to own their story, own their, like you said, own the miles they've walked, and create a life that's worth living outside the military?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you saying the epic transformation. I don't feel that way at all.
course.
I think you and I were talking off camera. You were saying something to the effect of, like, you know, you still feel all the things that you did in the Marine Corps, managing multiple aircraft and, you know, millions of dollars of equipment, you know, you still feel vulnerable. You still feel like you're trying to figure it out. That's exactly how I feel.
Yep.
You know, for all of the things that I've done post-military, and some of them have been, I guess, reasonably successful in the eyes of whatever metrics people use today, but I still feel like half the time I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And that's the truth. Like, sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and I'll be like, what am I doing? Like, where's this going? How does this end? And it's terrifying, you know? Or I'll get up, I'll be ready to go give a speech at a commercial bank, and I'm getting ready to walk on stage, and all of a sudden I have a panic attack, and I'm like, why am I even here? These people what do I have to offer a bunch of bankers? Mm-hmm. They don't want to hear from me, you know? And I think what all that is, at least for me, is that whole element of what Stephen Pressfield calls resistance.
Yes.
In the book War of Art. You know, we all deal with resistance. We all deal with self-sabotage that gets in between us and our higher self. And the more we try to push toward our higher self, the more we try to find that next thing that matters in the world, the more resistance is going to dig its heels in between you and me. And it's going to put itself, it may be as overeating, oversexed, drugs, alcohol. You don't belong, you're not relevant, you don't matter. I've told them all to myself. And mostly I've told them to myself after I got out of the military.
Yes.
And so that battle has to be fought every day. And it doesn't matter how successful you are, or how many plays you write, or how many speeches you give, or how many decimals or, you know, zeros are on the right side of that dollar, or on the decimal point, left side. It doesn't matter, because resistance is going to show up every day and try to put itself between you and your higher self.
So what are some of the tools, strategies, therapies, and resources you've come to know and trust? What are some of the rituals you employ every day that you were just talking about? And do you believe that these are tools that all veterans can use to successfully transition and transform themselves?
So if you buy the notion that resistance is going to try to stop you as you transition, then you've got, I believe, the same, you know, we have a lot of gifts as warriors.
Yes, we do.
And family members.
Yes, we do.
Don't leave all that stuff in the team room.
No.
Right? I wrote a book called Mission America. That's the first tool I would say. Read Mission America. You can go to theheroesjourney.org. It's this book right here. It fits right in the cargo pocket, but read it, because there's a lot in here about how to approach what you do. But a lot of the tools that we were gifted in the military have tremendous relevance today. One of them is regimen. Mm-hmm. I believe if you want to be free in your life, discipline equals freedom.
Yes.
Discipline equals freedom. If you want the ability to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, and how you want to do it, there has to be discipline. There has to be regimen. There has to be a battle rhythm from the time you wake up in the morning until the time you go to bed at night. And it needs to address the alignment of mind, body, spirit, and craft.
I love it.
And you got to work your butt off at it, right? Just as hard as you work at your craft in the military, maybe harder. So that's the first thing. The second thing is get in touch with your story. If you don't believe that story can save your life, and that your personal backstory It is the calling card of who you are as a person. It will help you find your voice, it will help you heal, and it will help you close the trust gaps with the civilians you're trying to lead in this world. If you don't know your own story, no one else is going to know your story, and you're going to be lost.
Yes.
You're going to be untethered, floating in the sea of transition, and that ain't where you want to be.
No, it's not fun.
And then the final thing that I would say, so having a regimen, having a story, is really work hard to find your voice, to clarify your purpose. It's never going to end, but clarity of purpose is something that I see a lot of warriors moving away from. I think it's what's killing us. I think it's what's causing us to over-medicate. I think it's what's causing us to go dark. When we're in the military, we're fully expressed. We know who we are. Even if we hate the work, we know who we are. When we come out of the military, it's like changing planets. We no longer know who we are. So whatever you've got to do to get reconnected to your purpose, to find out who am I, why am I here, what do I have to offer? 3 questions that Dr. Diego says we should always ask ourselves. And you may not know the answers. Keep working your story. Keep getting in there and sticking and jabbing, trying to tell your story. And through your story, you'll answer that last piece.
So let's finish up on the most pressing question I wanted to ask you is give us a scoop on Last Out, the Elegy of a Green Beret, how it's grown, how it came to be, how it's evolved, and what's coming down the line that we can watch out for in the future.
So Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret, I started writing this play 2 years ago. And I started it as part of my public speaking for my rooftop leadership that I do as a way to speak better. Several of my acting coaches gave me a 1-person play to write for 5 minutes on a little totem, a silly band that my son gave me, and I built the play around the 5-minute talk around that. They were crying when I was done. They said, "That's a play." So I started writing. 2 years later, I had this fully realized production. Which, by the way, this is something I want to say to your viewers: is if you serve a purpose bigger than yourself in transition, whatever it is, people will come to your aid in ways that you could never imagine. You know this, you see it every day. And so I had screenwriters and playwrights come to my aid and help me write it. The next thing we know, we had a cast, and we put this thing out on November 10th, 2018, right over here at the Waterfront Marriott in Tampa, sold out house. They said every civilian in America needs to see this play.
Yes.
That was what they said in the talkback. So we set up a 20-city tour. We just finished the first leg of the 20-city tour. We've been to Albuquerque, we've been to Orlando, Sarasota, obviously we were in Tampa, Washington, D.C. And so now we're on a hiatus and we're getting ready to take it to a bunch of other cities. And the play is about a Green Beret sergeant named Danny Patton, who is fighting this long war in Afghanistan, and he's been killed in the first scene. And he wants to let go of everything he's holding on to and go to Valhalla, the warrior resting ground, and know peace. But he's holding on to something and he can't let go. So some buddies of his come down from Valhalla and they take the shape of the people who made his heart pump the most blood in his life so that he can go back through his life and figure out what he's holding on to, let go, and know peace. And in doing that, the audience is taken on an 85-minute white knuckle ride through the life of a warrior and his family and what it feels like to go down that road. And at the end of it, civilians, veterans, warriors, gold stars are all at the same place, feeling that journey. And that, I believe, is what's necessary for us to move forward as a nation, to move forward as veterans, to have that common feeling. We can thank people for their service all day long, but when you feel that visceral, what it feels like to lose a friend or go to war or say goodbye to your wife or your child, or to hear your son say, "Dad, I'm joining up."
Yeah.
And I felt that. That's what this play does. So lastoutplay.com, we're going all over the country. There's talk about it becoming a movie. There's talk about it going off Broadway. There's talk about it becoming a streaming series. Right now, with our 4 cast members who are all veterans and family members of the military, we're just trying to stay true to the story. We're trying to help as many civilians as possible see this story and validate the journey of our warriors and our veterans and their families as we go community to community. That's what we're focused on. Our nonprofit, The Hero's Journey, is putting it out there. If it goes bigger, great, but right now we're just focused on helping communities understand the cost of war.
Thank you so much. If you can just talk to the crowd and ask and give them your credentials, basically, how do we find you on social media? How do we watch some clips of the play? How do we get more information about Scott Mann and Elegy of the Green Beret?
So if you're interested in like business-wise or public speaking or learning to be a better speaker, I train storytellers in that, and it's my rooftopleadership.com is my methodology on that. It's a lot of cool stuff there, free video blogs on how to make better connections. On the nonprofit side, if you're a warrior or a family member and you want to learn how to tell your story better, you go to theheroesjourney.org. We got all kinds of books for kids, transition books, but most of all, we focus on how do you tell your story, and that's theheroesjourney.org. And then finally, the play, Last Out, is traveling all over the country right now. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. It's going to end its run in 2019, and it's gone. And then it's, you need to see this play. It's a story that's never been told and a voice that's never been heard. And you can go to lastoutplay.com. You can see where we're going. You can buy your tickets. You can go to the media page and see all the trailers and the cool TV interviews. So those are the 3 areas I would tell folks to go. And for our transitioning veterans, no kidding, get this book, Mission America. It will really help you transition.
Thank you so much, Scott Mann. Lieutenant Colonel, Green Beret, warfighter, hero, now changing people's lives every day. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling your story. Oh, absolutely. I really appreciate you. And that wraps up another edition of Vetting America. I'd like to thank everyone at home. Thank you so much.
Hey, this is Scott Mann, former Green Beret and also the playwright and actor in Last Out. And I'm inviting you to subscribe to Vetting America on YouTube, where